Welcome back to Stardust. We're playing the Stardust Star Wars Galaxies emulator on the Stardust server. Again, my name is Gremlin, and we're going to talk about crafting. Been getting a ton of requests to explain the crafting system a little bit in Star Wars Galaxies for those of you who don't know anything about Star Wars Galaxy crafting, and then I'll even go over some specifics for the server that are unique, different, and have been changed to better streamline and provide a little bit more new content to the server. So what I'm going to do is let's go over everything. So let's say you want to start crafting, you have no idea what's going on. I'm going to show you everything you need to know about it. So let's start. So when you start a crafting profession, for character select, just go ahead and select the artisan profession. You're going to start just normal character creation. The only other difference is that you're not really going to get a weapon. You'll probably get a survival knife. You'll still get the armor. You'll still get the fruit, which is very important. But most importantly, you'll get one of these. Let's examine this. You will get this generic crafting tool at 0 effectiveness. So the crafting tools in this, the effectiveness is important. I'll go ahead and talk about that now. But what that does is actually affects how well you craft. It actually will narrow the margin between successes and failures and whatnot, depending on how high it gets. Perfect tools, like you see, this is a perfect tool, is a 15. And it actually does go negative. So it can go, the worst you can get is negative 15. And the best you can get is positive 15 here. Now, when you're actually grinding and everything like that to actually level up crafting, the tools don't matter. The tools only matter at the end when you're actually trying to get a product to sell. And I'll go over that in a second. So when you get that, so like I said, when you start, you're going to get this generic crafting tool, and let's say I want to start right away and start to grind. So let's open up this generic crafting tool. Now, I obviously on this, I have a Master Armorsmith, Master Merchant, Master Tailor, with some Artisan. Almost can get Master Artisan, but not quite. Need a couple more points, so unfortunate, but that's the case. So when you open this up, you're not going to have all these, but what you are going to have is, you can go to miscellaneous, and you'll have a good amount of these, especially these crafting tools, and that is how you level. We start with Artisan. That's how you're going to level these starting boxes. So let's say I want to be a weaponsmith, or well, let's just say I'm an armorsmith. So I'll talk about how to be an armorsmith. So you get novice, artisan, and then you're going to just start going up this tinkering tree. Now the reason you usually always want to go up this tinkering tree unless you're just going to be a chef, tailor, or just a merchant or something like that. But this tinkering tree has everything else, and you're going to need, some of these components are used for some of the other components and vice versa. So let's talk about the tailoring. In order to increase this, we need, let's see if I have, it's called Artisan Experience. It's here. Artisan, it's somewhere here. Oh, here it is. It's general crafting experience. That's what you need for these boxes, is general crafting experience. And what gives general crafting experience? But this is the best in this miscellaneous. All this stuff gives general crafting experience. What I would recommend grinding is these wind current survey tools. So they give a good amount of XP, and they only need 8 metal, 5 metal, 3 metal for that. So I'm going to show you how to craft and how to get these resources. Now, so you say you're fresh, new to crafting, have no idea what's going on. You're probably going to want to level the surveying. Now, what surveying is, one of the other things that you get on your start is you're going to get this mineral, right here, mineral survey device, and I believe you get something else. You might get a chemical surveying device, but you also we'll have to craft other things. There's like wind, water. This is water, flora survey devices. But we're going to go over all that in a second. But right now, mineral. So, fresh tune. We looked at the crafting. What we need is metal. So let's go here and we can. Right here on this side is all the materials that you can see on the planet. Now, every planet is not unique but different. They all have their own resources. Some resources spawn across multiple planets. Some are particular, and then there are unique resources that only spawn on certain planets. The biggest, this is probably the chemical and flora and things like that are things that have unique planet-specific things. So, for example, I'm on Chandrilla, so this has Chandrillan fibroplast. Now, there's Tatooinian fibroplast, Yavin fibroplast, Dantooinian fibroplast. Usually, every planet has a unique fibroplast. So that it does matter when you get into specific high-end recipes. They'll ask for a planet-specific or some kind of material-specific thing. So let's go back here. We're jumping ahead. Let's go back here. Let's find some metal. So I have access to a ton of different metal here. Let's close all these. Oops. All right. Ton of different metal, and these are all. So this is steel. This is a substat of duralloy. This is another steel. So there's 3 steels, 2 irons, couple copper, some aluminum, and gemstone is not a metal. So what I'm going to do is actually just go and survey all of them, see if I can get a spawn, and I'll talk about the spawns in a second. So on this, while I'm doing that, on this side is the tool actually working. So what it's going to do is when you survey, and I'm just going down the list to see if I can not move. But yeah, here we go. So when you survey, it's going to give you a bunch of percentages. Now, what these percentages are concentration. When you start out, this range is only going to be about 64 meters. So it's going to be a smaller area in which you can survey. And then every time you go up in surveying, this will increase. So I think it gets up to 400, 500, something like that. It's a pretty big area. And of course, when you survey, you'll pull up more material. So let's talk about sampling. So now I want to get this plum bum iron because it's at 25%. It's actually kind of low. So let's look at the other stuff. Hopefully there's a higher. That's slightly higher. That's also slightly higher. What you want to do is you want to shoot for above 50. So since I already saw something that's above 50, let's get on my speeder and let's go to it real quick. So it's going to give you, when you do that, when you hit survey, it's going to give you resource survey. It'll give you a little waypoint to the highest concentration, and you can just hit survey again, and we can chase this concentration up to where it tapers off. So if you keep surveying, it'll keep taking you to the higher and higher concentration. So we can stop here at like 75%, but they go up. I've seen like 90% things spawn. So you want to shoot for above 50 just because it will make your life easier. Now so this is a copper. I'm going to go ahead and hit sample, and I'm going to show you. We're going to get just enough to do this, to craft something. So it successfully locates 7 samples, and I get 26 surveying experience. The more you survey, the more experience you get, and then you can unlock these boxes. Now, the more boxes you have, the more experience you have, or more expertise, I guess, you have in it with the boxes, the more you'll be able to sample. This rate will go much higher, and the more experience you'll get. So I think we needed, how much did we need? Like, we'll get 20. We'll get one more tick. I think that was enough. But so what I would recommend is, especially when you're starting off, do this first. It's kind of tedious, but just go and, you know, make a list of the things that you need to get. In this case, it's metals for the first couple crafts, and just go and park yourself somewhere where there's a high concentration of metal, so that you can make the next couple things for free. Otherwise, you have to go and you have to find someone that sells metal, and this is, you're going to be all self-sufficient. So I'm going to stop here. This is somewhere here, so hopefully 26 copper. That's what we were looking for. And I'm going to show you about some crafting. So I'll just stay out here. So what's great about this crafting grind is you can do it while surveying. So let's remember, you're not going to see the majority of this. And we wanted to do wind. So this was 8 metal, 5 metal, 3 metal. So that's 16 metal. So I got a little bit more. So once you bring up the tool, you go and enter it. It'll bring you up this interface. It's going to show me all the metals I have, and since this is my main crafter, this is all the stuff I'm using for armor. And this is actually pretty good. Let me go through and explain all of this, what this means, and we'll go from there. So what this actually means is all these different materials have stats. They have a variety of different stats, and depending on depending on the product that you're trying to make, it's going to have what it's looking for, the quality. And that's going to be, for this quality, in order for this to be amazing, which it actually doesn't matter because it doesn't change anything. So, but say this is a tool, right, where this quality is going to matter. So whatever I put into this, the better material I put into it, the higher the tool is going to be. Surveys, bad example, but actually, hold on, let's go back. So to grind, I say you need to do the surveying tools. They have the best. XP, and it's really easy to make. But I'm just going to show you a little bit more of the crafting before I talk about what you need to grind to do that. So bear with me. What I'm going to do is go to our guild hall and talk about another part of the crafting before we get into what you need to grind and whatnot. So this is just a great overall overview of what it is to craft in Star Wars Galaxies. Now I'm in a guild hall here. We have these are all 4 guildies, so they're all stations. Now I'm going to make a crafting tool, so I'm going to show you the differences. So I don't have the right tool for that. So maybe I'll cut that part out, but I'll make a tool either way. We'll do a weapon in generic, and then I have a ton of items here. So mineral, chemical. Let's look at, where is this copper? This copper was pretty good, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it, copper, and then this last thing, it wants fiberplast or chemical. So I've got a bunch of. I'm trying to find one that is not all that useful. Remember what I've got? Actually, some rare stuff in here. I'll just go ahead and use this, just for fun. So let's go ahead and assemble that. And so once you assemble it, this is the effectiveness I was talking about. I was using okay, probably middle of the road stats. They're not amazing, so you're not going to get an amazing effectiveness. And since I'm crafting with using this basic tool actually cannot access these advanced crafting tools. So what it does is the tool like plugs into these stations and lets you experiment. And I'll talk about experimenting in a second. As soon as I craft this, I'm going to just say this is the test tool. And it's going to make. So right here you're going to see it cooking. It takes about a couple seconds usually for everything to craft in a crafting tool. and we're going to grab it here. So this is the test tool, and funny enough, you can use this tool to create a new tool. So I'm going to do that, and just to save some time, I'm going to use some good copper. Forgot which one's good stuff. I believe this is actually pretty high. So this right here is 93%. So you'll see that in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, and we're going to make a very good tool. And this stat, as you can see, well, you can't really see, but it's like I said before, it's conductivity it wants. And since every resource is different, chemicals don't have conductivity at all. So I'm just going to throw this in there, and we're going to assemble. It says, yes, we want to assemble. So you'll see this tool effectiveness has gone up. And we had a great success, and it gives us more experimental effectiveness value. When you get to more advanced crafting, this system you can take foods to increase your rolls. So if I was making armor, for example, I would have eaten this food right here. This pylon cake increases your assembly for the next roll of the crafting attempt. So before I hit craft on that, I would have taken one of these. It would have boosted this, and I might have gotten an amazing success instead of a great success. Now, after that, I just hit next, and you're going to get this new window here. Now that you have a tool that can actually run experiments and whatnot, you're going to get experiment, create prototype, and create manufacturing schematic. We're going to go over the manufacturing schematic in a little bit because I'm actually going to use that to make a bandolier. So that's step 2 of this. So let's go ahead and hit experiment. And you see here, because I am not a master, I don't think. Master artisan, I believe, gets another 2 points or something. But I have 10 experiment points. Oh, no, that's what it is. Let's talk about experimentation right here. So when you go up this tree, you're going to have the availability to get artisan, assembly, and experimentation. The higher your assembly is, the greater chance you'll have amazing successes on that little window I showed you. And the experimentation actually directly influences how many points you have here. So if you hear people saying that they're a 12-point crafter, that means that they have all the points that they can get from the tree, not only from the tree, but you can also get another 25 points. So adding up to right here, it has it. Let's see if I can't really open this, but for my armor, I have the 100 points for mastering, and then I have clothing attachments. Where's the clothing attachment? Here. Armor assembly, experimentation 9. I have a number of different clothing attachments that add up to 25, and that gives me an additional 2 points. And I'll show you that in a bit. So since I don't have those things for artisan, I only have 10 points. So we're just going to use all the 10 points to do this. Now, what I would suggest is the more of this that you do, it uses points, and then it'll say run experiment, and it'll go up in the effectiveness. This is the risk of it, so it's about 10% risk of going up or down. So what I can do, another little trick is about foods and boosting, is you take one of these Bespin ports. So I'm going to have a Bespin port. It's going to increase my effectiveness to pretty high levels. So I'm going to go ahead and run experiment, and then I get an amazing success. So the tool has gone up in effectiveness. As you remember before, it was like -9. Now it's at 5. And then I'm just going to go ahead and finish out the rest of it. So it caps 93%. That was that 933 out of 100. So with that, you're going to get a 12.99 tool. So like I said, perfect tools are 15. So in order to get like a 15 tool, we would need a perfect conductivity stat. So that's 1,000 conductivity, and then you can get that perfect tool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create this schematic. And since it's only a 12, I don't really need it. I've got a bunch of 15s already, so I'm going to talk about this practice mode. What practice mode does is, well, when you craft an item, you get XP. When you craft it in practice mode, you get a good amount more XP. I don't know if it's double, but it's like something like double. So when you're grinding, make sure practice mode is on. So I'm going to just go ahead and practice, and it's going to tell me right here, I received 260 points of general crafting experience. So, so when you're grinding, so now that I've explained the basic crafting part, you can go through and grind using these tools here. So just grind this up, and I'll talk about I'll actually link something in the comments about crafting macros. I might actually go over that in a later part of the video. But yeah, so what you could do is you can run a crafting macro that goes through and selects each tool, gives you a certain amount of seconds to put in the components like I showed you before, and then it finishes off making sure that it's in practice mode. And then you just keep doing that over and over and over again until you can train each box, and then keep moving on. Now back to the grinding thing, once you get up to engineering, some form of engineering, I don't know where it is, here, engineering 3. Once you get up to engineering 3, you can buy, or you can make deeds to wind power generators, and I'll show you this installation right here. So wind power generators. Now, if you can see this needs more specific resources. So you not only need to go find metal, but you need to find steel, and you need to find low grade ore, and you need to find aluminum, and you need to find non-ferrous metal. So, for example, if you just got aluminum, that also is a non-ferrous metal. So you can use 30 aluminum here. Steel is obviously a metal, so you can do just steel here. That's 190. And then low grade ore to finish it off. So just go get a bunch of aluminum, go get a bunch of steel, and then some low grade ore, and you should be able to grind this up. Now these give a significant more amount of XP more than you did before, and what you're going to be using these for is to actually get up to these higher professions. So all the rest of these, all these novice boxes for the higher professions still require the general crafting. So using those deeds to get the general crafting up is good. So now that I've finished everything that I needed to finish here, I would go and unlock Armor Smith, and then I would start crafting armor in order to get that up. And I'll go over some of the boosts later on in the video, but let's get back to the core mechanics of crafting. And I think I'm still waiting on components to cook, so let me go double check on this. This is actually going to be later in the video. The next part I'm going to show you is the components that I've been making now. So let me just check on them, and then we'll go to that part of the video, and then we'll come back to the finished crafting of the bandolier, which is what I'm crafting here. Alright, so it does look like I've finished up all this crafting with this. I was able to take these components, and then I'm going to show you, I'm going to pause the video, show you explain more about these subcomponents in that video on a different crafter, and then I'm going to take these subcomponents and then put them into another subcomponent and then I can put it into a piece of clothing and get statted clothing. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back. All right, in this part of the video, I'm going to go over some structures that you need for mass producing crafting and things called subcomponents in this. I've already crafted, which hopefully I'll show you earlier in the video. I've already crafted a component that I want to be using. It's this one of going to be a subcomponent that I'm going to be putting into a shirt, and the end product is going to be not a shirt, sorry, a bandolier, and the end product is going to be an injury treatment 16, wound treatment 16, hopefully 4-socket bandolier. So I'm going to show you the subcomponent part, and we're going to go over the structures. So for this is actually a food and chemical component, and so we're going to get our food and chemical structure out. I already have a equipment factory and a wearables factory. Now this food and chemical structure is going to be able to craft this item here. I know that because it took a food and chemical crafting tool to do it, and we can see that this was, what was this called? Advanced biosensors. So this is what I would have crafted for this, and then I'll show you that crafting process hopefully in the earlier part of the video. So 1 second here, let's go ahead and show you the controls for a factory. So I dropped the factory down. Now factories require both power and credits in order to work. So by opening up the exam window, we can see that I have a maintenance pool of about 3,000 credits, and that's about 3 days, and then my power reserves are already in 5 days for that. But if you're brand new to the thing and you drop down one of these, chances are that both of those values would be 0. You would just have to go here to the structure management, pay maintenance, and then you can use this little slide rule to pay maintenance, and then you can also do power. Now power in the game is a resource that you can find. You can use one of the survey tools. I believe it is this mineral survey tool. I don't have the skill to use it, but you open this mineral survey tool, and the items that you're looking for are called like radioactive or things like that. And then you can either go and hand sample them, or you can drop structures called fusion generators on those spawns, on those concentrations of spawns, and you can gather power that way. And then you take that power and put it into this. I don't actually have any power on this character, but luckily this is already has everything. So now that we have that, now we can go to this is your permissions. You can actually add people to this. So let me go ahead and add Fishgrim, which is my main crafter, as well, so that it can check it once this is done. The character that I'm actually on right now, and if you're going to be doing a lot of crafting, you're probably going to have to be doing this, is getting separate characters to fill certain roles for crafting. So my main character is a armorsmith tailor, and I wanted to make you have the ability to make shirts and whatnot with bioengineered stats on them. So I showed you that this is a injury treatment, wound treatment stat. So this can go into a number of different pieces of clothing, and I'm going to show you that in a second as soon as I finish crafting this. But this is actually a master bioengineer, master doctor, so that I can make these. It's pretty much the only reason I have this. So this also master doctor and a little entertainer, because this is also my buff bot, so she can run around, buff me, and it also acts as a subcomponent crafter. So let's go ahead and crank this up. Now what I'm going to need is probably, I would say maybe, I'll go ahead and make like about a dozen of them, just to be sure. So in order to get this data component into this, we are going to go to options, we're going to select access schematic, and then we are going to find the medic active biosensors. Now, when you put things into a factory, they all have to match whatever the schematic said that they were. So, for example, I made this schematic using these 4 resources. And if I wanted to continue making this subcomponent from the schematic, I have to have those exact same resources loaded into the factory in order for it to produce. Otherwise, it's not going to do it. And I can get a little further into that maybe later when I talk about when I actually talk about the subcomponents and crafting a finished product. So let me just go ahead and load that up, and we are going to, so once you load it up, you're going to actually see a couple more things here. You're going to see this is pretty important, the list of ingredients in station. This is going to tell you how much of each specific ingredient you need in that. Now these are the names of these ingredients, so you can see that Dophiso, or whatever that's called, is actually this avian Dathmerian avian meat. So it needs 25 of that, and then 20 of that, 25 of something else, 25 something else, 10 something else. So I have all that in my inventory. Let's go ahead and put that into the factory. So we'll go to, now that I know what I need, I can go to Access Station Ingredient Hopper, and it'll bring up this window, and then I can just drag what I want in there. So let me make sure that is that. And now, so schematics, and I'll tell you a little trick about crafting. Schematics on here have manufacturing limits. When you go and create a manufacturing schematic, it'll ask you how many you want to make. The cap is 1,000. So best practice is just always make the 1,000. You can always, as long as you have the materials, you can go back and just keep crafting it, and it makes it so that you don't have to waste the initial resources to create another crafting schematic. So if you have a bunch of resources, just make the 1,000, and then you can just keep going back and filling this up. Now you can see here that I've already made 122 of this specific component already in the schematic. So I have probably more than enough to finish all of them, but that'd be a waste of resources because I don't need them right this second. So that's actually the wrong thing. But for example, this is the list that we're looking at here. So I need, let's see here. I have this. I have this. We need this 25 of this insect meat, and the last thing I believe is wood or something. Wood. Yeah, this wood. So what I'm going to do here is, since I have the less amount of meat, I'm going to take the meat out, and actually let's take this out. It's this wild meat here, just because it's divisible by 10. So like I said, I wanted to make 10 of these, so I'm only going to put in 10, enough to make 10. So if I do this, it'll create 10 items, and then I'm going to get an email saying that the factory has ran out of ingredients. And that's a great way to control how many you make. If you just throw them all in there, it's going to make them all, and whether or not you need them all. So don't do that. You always want to have an idea of how many you want to make, and go with that. But so that's this part of the crafting thing. So this will take, as soon as I hit start crafting, which I hit the wrong button. So let's craft. It's starting. And you probably heard that this went off. So let's crafting finish. So this is when it'll craft. Now if you double click this, it'll actually say the time per object. So it takes about a minute, and it'll say how many this run has currently made. So we're at 0. This is going to take about 10 minutes to get, or 12 minutes to get 12 of these. So I'll get back to you once I have them all. Alright, so we just picked up these components off of the subcomponents that we just crafted with our bioengineer. I'm going to show you what's the next step for making this. Now, of course, crafting tons of components, subcomponents, and I'm going to show you what it is that we're trying to craft and go over everything. So we're trying to craft this what is this, multi-pocket bandolier. It needs a cargo pocket, which I'm not going to show you how to do, but cargo pockets, and then fiberplast metal, and then reinforced fiberplast panel, which is what we're going to do now, and that's actually what can take the bioengineer component. So we're going to go down here, we're going to go to this fiberplast panel, and you're going to see that it requires fiberplast, inert petrochemical fiberplast, metal, and then optional is the biological component, which is what we made here. This is the biological component. That's that 1616 injury wound treatment component. So we're going to load one of those up, and then we're going to load the rest of the things up. So I went ahead and I know what I'm going to load up here. So that, and do some of this copper because I know I have a lot. And then I believe this is, no, it's somewhere. This is what I need. Hold on. Let me just make sure. Oh, this is actually what it is. I have tons of those. So let's go ahead and assemble. Hopefully, let me make sure that I'm close enough to this. Let me actually back out of this, make sure. Since I'm making a draft schematic, I'm going to make sure that I am clicking on this so that it does register that I'm using this crafting station in order to do that, because you do need a crafting station in order to make crafting schematics and to experiment on things. So this you can't experiment on, but I need the crafting schematic. So let me go ahead and do this again. So this is out now, so that, I need that, and then what was it? Was it this? No. It was something. This is what it was. Okay, so go ahead and assemble that. It will ask if you want to take the next step. Now, before I was talking about taking this food, this pylon cake. This is when you would take it. So you'd take it now, and then you'd hit assemble. Then you'd say, yes, I'm sure, and then it will give you a higher result. As you can see here, I didn't get any experimental anything because this you can't experiment on. So you don't need to do that for this. But with other crafts, you do. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Like I said, can't experiment on this, so that option's gone. I don't want to create a prototype because I want to make more than that, so I don't want to have to keep crafting these over and over again. I'm going to throw them into a factory, and we're gonna do that. So I'm going to go ahead and let me name this 1616 medic, or let's say medic fiberplast reinforced fiberplast panel. So after I create this reinforced fiberplast panel, I'll go ahead and fast forward this, but pretty much I just go and put it back into the factory, put in all the necessary components to make the thing, and then hit craft. And then we'll cover the next part in a second. Alright, now we have this. Now that we have this subcomponent done, let's go ahead and take this out. And we're going to go to the final step in crafting an item, in crafting this bandolier. While my bike chooses to spawn, there is one thing that I kind of wanted to go over to. When you're making a multi-component, multi-tiered kind of item, you always want to make sure that you take into account the cost for the schematic itself. So, for example, when you make this, well, hold on, let me actually get into my little shop here, and I'll talk about it in detail. So when we open up this bandolier here, it requires a cargo pocket, a fiberplast metal, other metal, and that reinforced fiber plant panel. That's what we just made, that subcomponent. We put in that that BE component, and we made the fiberplast panel. So if I was to go and take this into a factory schematic, you have to make sure that all the serial numbers for all the items match. Like I showed you before with the specific resources, the same thing is true with subcomponents. And I'm going to show you, let me do some crafting here, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. So I have a ton of cargo pockets from previous, so I'm going to go ahead and load up a cargo pocket, and then I don't remember what is it that I'm supposed to, hold on a second, let me just look through all this. Let's see what I need to use. I'll just go ahead and use this aluminum since I have a ton of it, and then we'll use this Yavin fiberplast. So this is what I'm talking about when crafting. So when you use these subcomponents, just like the resources, they have their own unique names, and those names are actually the serial number. So all this, and that was the serial number is generated from the schematic. So that schematic that I made, all the components that go into making that schematic, including the the BE material or the BE tissues and everything like that, they have their own serial thing. So it just has to be the same essentially. So if I wanted to make a schematic of this, I could keep making a schematic. I could keep making them as long as the serial number is the same. And so let's go ahead and try this out now. The thing that's different about tailoring an armor smith is sockets. Sockets aren't tied to anything. It's complete RNG, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm going to probably have to craft a number of bandoliers here until I get a 4 socket that I want. And then I can go and take, depending on what I have left of this component, I'll go and take that into a factory. But going back to the factory thing, so you always want to make sure when you're crafting something and then you want to put it into a factory, you have to take into account that the items that you use are going to be consumed to make the draft schematic. So if I needed, let's say if I needed 10, if I wanted to make 10 of these, well, okay, let's say if I wanted to make 11 bandoliers, right, and I had 11 here, so I had all the stats that I thought I needed, and I use one of these reinforced fiberplast panels to make the schematic, then it'll cost 1 to make the schematic, and then I'll have a schematic, and then the rest will be, I'll have 10 for the rest of them. So if I wanted to make 11, I would be 1 short because I used one of them to create the draft schematic. Hopefully that's kind of clear, but if not, just message in the comments and whatnot, and I'll see if I can do a write-up as well. So great success, but no sockets, so useless. I'll go ahead and just make this, and let's call this 1616 injury treatment. Let's say, it's medic bando. 0 sockets. And let's make this a pretty color. So when you do craft, some items will have these different colors that you can do. It's pretty much the first color is going to be the accent color. The second color is the base color. What everything else is. And then that's really only important when it comes to armor. The second color is something like, for example, this piece of armor here. The second color is this red. The first color is this black. And for armor in particular, you can actually change the color. And when you change the color, it is that second color. So this one. So keep that in mind when you're crafting armors and stuff, that you can only change this second color after the fact. Alright, so let's create that. And now it's cooking. So it takes a couple seconds. And then I have this 1616 medic bandolier, 0 sockets. I'm not gonna continue to craft on camera, but I am gonna just keep going until I do get a four socket. But I wanted to also touch on vendors in this. In my previous video, I kind of talked about how vendors worked and how to buy things from vendors, and I'm going to show you how vendors work for the crafters. So, like I said before, merchant. Actually, I don't know if I actually said this. So this merchant profession is actually what controls vendors. This is what gives you the ability to have vendors. See, increases the vendor amount. It also gives you some unique things, like if you master this, you'll have a bunch of different kind of vendors that you can place, like droids and terminals and people and things like that. But the vendors themselves are actually created in an item. I'll go over this real quick. So if you have either vendor access on this vendor list or on the administrator list of a building that is set to public, you can go into this radial menu and it will say create vendor. It'll give you this option here for terminal, droids, species, and special vendors, and then you can go through and like say I want to make a Wookiee vendor. So I say yes, I say mail, and I will say test. Now these are actually all free. They don't cost anything or anything like that, but you can only have one at a time until you initialize it, and I'll show you what that means. So now that I have this Wookiee little test thing, I'm going to go over here and drop said Wookiee. And you can't move them around, unfortunately. You kind of only drop them in place. But what you can do is you can rotate them. So, alright. So we have a test vendor here. These are the vendor controls. If I try and use it, it'll say the market is unavailable, currently deactivated, not accepting new items, blah, blah, blah. What you need to do there is actually go here and initialize vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and initialize the vendor. So it says vendor initialized, no longer can be moved. And then there's a couple other things. So most importantly, it works kind of like any of the other structures in this, in that it has maintenance and it costs money to stay alive. Now it doesn't cost power, which is good. It only requires maintenance to keep going, and it's actually pretty cheap, especially if you have master merchant. It's pretty cheap. So, oh, I've got a custom. Oh, it's Ivo. So from here, I would deposit money. I would start putting items in, and then you could turn on ad barking, which is here. It'll give you the option to have them on the planetary map as well, under vendor controls. But I'm not going to get into all that right now. Just play around with it. But let me go ahead and remove this vendor. I don't need them. So this is my clothing vendor. So you can see here on the top you have for sale, offers, and stock room. This is actually, and then on this side is a location filter. So when you're doing this, this means all the vendors that you own. Entire galaxy is all the vendors on that, that this character has at all. The planet, region, whatever, and then you can do the individual one too. So this is really helpful if you have multiple vendors across the galaxy, but you don't want to go to them individually to manage them. So say something was delisted on another vendor, you can go here. You can also check all your offers on all your vendors, and so this is a different vendor. So let's see. This is actually this vendor here. So it says that this was delisted, so I'm going to go ahead and resell this. Now if you right click on it and go to details for reselling, you can see how much it was before. So I'll just hit resell and put in how much it was. Alright, so those were precision knives. Now back to the actual selling. So we're going to go to for sale. We can see that we have a number of different items on the vendor already with prices. So what I'm going to do is I want to sell that bandolier. So I'm going to go here, hit sell, select the bandolier, and then pretty much just put whatever you think it's worth. I have a pricing system for mine. So let me see if I can find it. It's pretty much how many BE components go into it, and then adding how much sockets are worth or so. So here I have, this is the same amount of BE components, it's just a different BE component. So it's a 1417 melee stun bandolier, and it's 1250, so, or sorry, 12,500. So I'll go ahead and put this up for the same, since it doesn't have any sockets. And that's it. So we have, let's just go over everything that we did. I wanted to create this bandolier, so we went and first we created the BE components for it. We put that into a factory crate, or a factory. We took it out of the factory, you know, a crate of it, and then we used those BE components to create this reinforced fiberglass panel, which is required. So that's that. This is that BE component that I was talking about. So I put that into it, created a schematic, put that back into a factory, and then I got out of the factory. I got these stack of, well, the stack of 11. I used one of those to go back here and create a bandolier. So that's the whole journey of being a crafter, and I'll also touch on some more specifics on how to optimize your crafting. So this video is already running a little bit long, and the next part I actually take about half an hour to explain it all, so I'm going to just break it up into 2 videos. So this one is focusing on what to do to craft. The next one is going to be focusing on exactly what to craft in order to grind, to master, and what other resources that we use in order to be the most efficient crafters we can. But again, thanks for watching. My name's Gremlin. Feel free to just leave any questions or comments you have in the comment section down below, or join our Discord and ask me directly what any questions you have or what concerns you might have. But thanks again for watching, and good luck out there.